it's the stuff that I didn't think I had to work on that person did a little bit better. And those little tiny details make a massive difference.
Today's guest, I have a hockey friend of mine, Adam Huxley. He played in juniors, semi-pro, and pro all over US and Canada. He is now a skills and development coach and just has amazing stories. You guys are going to enjoy this episode. Huxley, it's so good to see you. So those of you who are listening or watching, I actually know him because he used to play in the ECHL in Boise for the Idaho Steelheads, and I met him through a good hockey buddy of mine, Cody Lample. And I used to love coming to your guys' games. I don't know if it was intentional, but every time I sat down, you would fight literally like right in front of our seats and put on a nice little show. But it was good coming to your games.
Definitely not intentional. Probably just doing my job. A lot more luck. You know what's funny? Nick Diaz said the exact same thing. He said he walked in the rink and he thought that I fought because I knew he's there. Like we can see that people are there or something. That's you know as well as I do. Like when you're in the game, you're definitely not thinking about who's coming and go. Whatever. But hey, awesome! I'm glad you got the show.
Yeah, I loved it. So I want to start off by talking about your hockey journey because it was pretty cool. You traveled all around Canada, all around the US. You played everywhere from semi-pro to pro, exhibition games for the Oilers. Take me kind of through your journey.
You know, I have a weird journey. So I never really took hockey too seriously. Probably because, you know, when dad tells you to do something, you kind of rebel and don't want it. He wanted me to play hockey. And I just, you know what, to be honest, I still to this day apologize to a lot of people because now that I'm in the business of training kids and teaching kids and all that stuff. And you know, you meet all walks and you learn how to deal with different kinds of kids. And now I think to myself, like, holy crap, I owe some apologies to some parents that you know, along the way were just trying to help me out or whatever. And in turn, I was a little shit, so to speak. And, you know, now I get them and I'm like, oh God, I hope that I wasn't like that to other parents when I know I was. And so anyway, you know, dad told me not to, but he wanted me to play hockey. And so I fought it quite often, but I had a little bit of a turning point in my life. Went to Notre Dame, and it's an academy here, and so in Alberta there's Americans, there's all kinds of people that go there. It's Wilcox, Saskatchewan, tiny town of like 500 people or something. And to be honest, it turned my life around. I went there, kind of got focused on hockey, and then, you know, I went from being a player that was, you know, borderline playing house league to 2 years later playing junior A in Saskatchewan for Melfort Mustangs in the SJHL, which would be like the USHL, I guess. Now, obviously, the USHL is a really good league. And then 2 years later, played in the best junior hockey league, and or a year later, best junior hockey league in the world in the WHL, and took that route. You know, you got the college route and that route. I took that route. Played in Saskatoon, and to be honest. You know, obviously after that went to pro and stuff, and we can get into that in a sec. But to be honest, I never started out as a fighter. I kind of started out as a defenseman, and randomly one snowy night in the middle of the week in Melfort, later on coach from the Blades, Kevin Dickey, just came out because his wife's from Melfort, and he came and watched the game because he used to coach there. And I got put on forward that night, and I was pretty mad about it. I'm a D-man, right? So I went around and I hit a bunch of guys and fought and whatever. And he's like, I want that guy. I love his energy. And so they listed me, and the next year brought me up. But to be honest with you, I never really was a fighter until Melfort. That's a funny story in itself. But I was a rookie, and some guy shoe checked me. Do you know what not shoe checked me? Shaving cream my brand new dress shoes, and I was not happy. So I went to the rink. I wouldn't talk to anyone, and I went out on the ice, and I was so mad. I got in 2 fights that night, and the guys are like, man, you should fight more often and whatever. So kind of harmless prank that actually started my fighting career in hockey. And then obviously I went to the Blades, and I was in over my head to start with, probably fighting wise, but so I put a lot into learning, and I did a lot of boxing and a lot of different things, and got by the last year was one of the tougher guys in the league or whatever. And went to and continued that path, obviously, trying to improve my game along the way. But yeah, that's kind of my junior career. That's kind of how I got it started. On the pro side of things, I ended up, after junior, I went to Calgary, and I ended up in Las Vegas because that was their farm team. And Glenn Gulletson, who's now the Oilers coach. And so I went down there, kind of Calgary sent me down from, it was the lockout year, so there's no way to stay in the American Hockey League because all the NHL guys get pushed down. Kind of what's happening during this pandemic, to be honest with you. It's a real tight area, or there's not a lot of movement because you can't call guys an up and down because of the pandemic. So it's very similar to that year. There was no NHL, so there was a lot of NHL guys in the American League, hence pushing guys down to the East Coast League. So yeah, I know I got my start in Vegas. It was quite a change in life. I can tell you a lot of stories about that too. But what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. No,
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, I met some amazing people in there, whatever, and then I went on, the next year I kind of came back to Vegas a bit, and then I ended up in Victoria, actually, which was kind of one of the darker periods of my life.
Why do you say that was darker?
Well, we had a bad team. It's my first time ever getting moved. Well, my last year in Saskatoon, I got traded, and that was devastating because I'd been in Saskatoon for 4 years, 3 years, and ended up in Seattle. But then Seattle was awesome. I mean, I can't wait for the NHL to go there. Honestly.
Yeah, the Kraken. I can't wait.
But then I went to Vegas, and I loved it there, and I got moved, and it was just really hard on me. And then our team wasn't good, and you just, at that point, you're like, is it time to, is this really what I want?
Mm-hmm.
Do I really want to play hockey? Do I really want to, go that path or whatever? And then, I toughed it out. I ended up in Stockton.
Yeah.
And it was resurgence for sure. It was a very new organization that came in the year before. So you know how American fans are there, and no offense to any of them, they're not overly educated in hockey. So when they come to the game, they want to see fighting, hitting. And so the most popular guys are the fighter, the goalie, and anyone else who is physical, and then scores. And then the rest of the guys, even though they might be better players, but just they're not. So I was a fan favorite every year. Got the bobblehead, all that kind of stuff. But no, and it was an amazing experience. I loved living there, and anyone who knows Stockton, it's not the nicest place. Someone actually said it's a great place to stop, take a piss, and leave. But but I personally really liked it because I met a lot of people away from the rink that I became really good friends with, and to this day, I'm still good friends with. Such good people, and I actually like Stockton. So
in Stockton, that's where you met the Diaz brothers, right?
Yes. It was actually crazy story. Nick came to a game and I fought or whatever, and we were at this place afterwards called 856, this little dive place. Anyway, I don't even know if it's there anymore. That's the only place to go in Stockton after, at least that you're, in a safer neighborhood or whatever. And they used to go over there, and Nick came up and he goes, "Hey, you're the hockey guys." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Hey, when you guys got in a fight tonight, I really like that." And I said, "Oh, that was me." And he said, "Oh, hey, I think you'd really like what we do over at the gym." And so he's like, "You should come over." And so he gave me his number, and I texted him. And of course, he's late. If you know Nick, he's on Diaz time. He is on his own page, which is awesome. I mean, if you've ever met Nick and them, they roll to their own beat. They don't listen to anyone else, as you know. And so I ended up in the gym. The first, I remember how, and I've fought a lot of people with bare knuckles at this point, like with hockey. And I remember being so intimidated. There's some pretty, guys in there that were scary or whatever. But anyway, I watched the class, and then it got to open roll time because you work on a few moves on the mat, and then and he goes, and he's like, "Hey, open mat," and I'm like, "What the hell is open mat?" And he's like, "Oh, you grapple for there's a 5-minute round with each guy or whatever." So he's like, oh, I'll go with you. So the first person I ever grappled with, I've never done jiu-jitsu in my life, I've just watched it on TV, is Nick Diaz. I think he tapped me out, like, and I was stronger than him. Like, I'm like in playing shape, and he absolutely embarrassed me in every sense of the word. He tapped me out at least 30 times, and I'm like, okay, I got to get better at this shit. So my goal was to go in there as much as possible so that I could at least just not get tapped out every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So then I went there a ton, I even on game, like days before games, I was in there training. And then one time I was suspended and I got to know Nathan and all the guys a little bit, but I was just like kind of an outsider at that point. And then one time Nick was training for either Alvarez or Ken Shamrock, not Ken, Frank. And so I was just happened to be in the gym. I was suspended, so the guys were on the road, and so Nick's like, "Hey, you want to box? You want to spar? I need a sparring. Like, I got, you can jump in the mid rounds or whatever." So I went to what's your sports authority? I got one of those because I didn't have my mouth guard on. I got one of those. I quickly ran. This is on a Saturday at like 8:00. Went to Sports Authority, got one of those things you put in the mouth guard that you put in the hot water and you bite quick, and I put that in, and I got in there and I sparred Nick, and all I remember is like, because I boxed a lot, so I kind of knew my way around the ring, and all I remember is like I hit him with a body shot, and those guys will only go as hard as you go, right? And so all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God. So he's stalking me, and then I think he's going to hit me high, and I only remember is he hit me right in the solar plex, and I remember hunched over, and he's kind of hitting me, but at the same time he's like, hey man, are you all right? Kind of thing. Like, I know you're not like a professional fighter like this way. Anyway, we went a bunch of rounds, and then after that he's like, oh, I'll spar with you anytime. So I actually sparred with Nick quite often in Stockton. I'm not one of his top guys like Alan Sanchez or one of those guys that are going to walk in there and give him too much challenge, but I go in the mid rounds and I can move around and whatever. And so after that, he's like, hey, you want to come over to the house? So I went over to the house, and then they're him and his buddies and all the guys in Stockton were so welcoming. And to this day, I still talk to them. And Randy Spence and actually another guy came out here, actually came to Saskatchewan to a week. I'm going to have a cabin at. And they came out for like a week last year in -30. They'd never even been in -1. So I've kept really good touch. I went to a lot of Nathan's fights. I still keep in contact with Nathan and Nick. And I'm so excited to see Nathan whoop some ass on June the 12th.
That's awesome. I'm sure it sharpened your fighting skills too. So
it was awesome.
Yeah.
But that's the most frequently asked question I have when I do any kind of podcast. How do you know Nick and Nathan? They're awesome. They've always been unreal to me. In the words of Nathan, that's my guy, and those are my guys. So, so much respect and love for those guys. They've done a lot for me. So,
yeah, those guys are great.
So I was there for like 3 or 4 years, and then went to Boise, where you guys are. Cody Lample, love Cody Lample. Okay?
Love Cody.
Cody Lample, he watches this. Him and his wife. Shout out. They're in Germany, I believe. They got some pretty cute little kids and stuff. So.
Oh my God, those girls are adorable.
Yeah, no, they're awesome. They're really good people. So I met a lot of good people there, and that again, I kind of went there, and that's a great organization. I mean, Boise is an amazing city, such fresh air. It's down in kind of a mountain base there. It's kind of that college feel with a ski town type thing, and loved it. What a great university there, like that football team and everything about Boise is awesome. I mean, the people downtown treat you. I mean, it's the cheapest place to drink in the United States for sure.
I think was I bartending when you were there? I used to bartend there.
I'm not sure. I wouldn't know, but I definitely I love my time in Boise. And I actually really want to go back. We had a reunion a couple of years ago, but I just couldn't make it. This pandemic, we're supposed to have one this year, I think. But I am definitely going to the next one. So if anyone from Boise is listening, please wait until this pandemic's done so we can come down. But yeah, and then I had a really rough exit in Boise. I had a coach there. The year before, I was actually in Chicago for most of the year. And near the playoffs, I kind of got sent down on purpose or asked to go down because I wanted to be in the playoffs with Boise. And so I went down and had a heck of a playoffs, and we actually beat Vegas out in the first round. The next year he tossed me to the curb about a month and something in. Usually with guys that have been around for a while, they'll put you on the 30-day and try to move you or whatever. He just tossed me out after everything I did for the organization and him. It had nothing to do with the organization. I mean, coach makes the decisions. And it's funny. So I was staying in the Grove Hotel waiting to see what I was going to do next. I was thinking, should I retire? Should I go home? And I had my old coach in Stockton. One of my coaches was in Vegas now as the head guy. And so he said, I called him and I go, hey, you guys are coming here next week. I would love to play against Boise. So he thought about it. He's like, yeah, let's do it. So he signed me.
Wow.
And so literally, I took my garbage bag with my hockey gear in it, which is another story, and crossed the hall and went to the other team. And I mean, I played really well. And after the weekend, he's like, we're keeping you, kind of like a dog that they found or something.
Well, that's
and then
awesome.
we went all the way to the final there. What an amazing time. And it's just crazy because my career went full circle. I started my pro career there and I ended it there. And the very last year, one of the management got in a fight with the organization or the rink management, and the team management got in a fight with the rink management, and they just ended up having no team the next year. So I was like, hey, I don't want to play anywhere else. I loved Vegas so much. So I just packed her in and went on with the second part of my life.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you're known as this tough guy throughout your own entire career, it sounds like. And a lot of people don't understand that fighting is a part of hockey. Can you explain that strategy a little bit more and kind of your take on it?
Okay. Well, I have a different take. I don't just fight to fight. And there's so many guys that hockey isn't like boxing. You don't get a guy in boxing that's 220 pounds fighting a guy that's 185. It's not happening. Right. So, hockey, there is that. I mean, I can go out and fight a guy that's 6'5", 230, and I'm 6 feet 190. Right. There's no weight classes. There's none of that. There is a little bit of a code, but nonetheless, if I want to bite off what I can chew, I can do it, right? Like, it's not like there's no commissions. And so you just go do your thing. And yeah, these fights are only a minute, but it's more, it's fists, ice, heads, so it's, there's a lot, you're putting yourself out there for a lot. But hockey, to me, hockey fighting is a big thing. One is protecting your teammates. It's a physical sport. So some guys can't just go run around and take liberties on the best players. Number two is a momentum thing. And that I was a massive momentum fighter. Like, I'm not afraid to tell a guy no when we're up 2-0 even though I'd love to fight the guy, even if I hate him, but why would I give you that momentum? Why would I give you that back so you guys can get back in the game? Right. Guys are Sunday afternoon game. We don't got a lot of life. Maybe you go get in a fight, pump the boys up, change it. And then again, sometimes you're just in the heat of battle and it happens, right? But if you watch the NHL last night, that's a prime example of why hockey still has a place in fighting still has a place in hockey. I mean, the Rangers don't have an answer to a tough guy. Yeah. They get embarrassed. Their top player gets thing, and right or wrong, what that guy did, it happens every shift. If you ask me, every single game there's a scrum and guys are getting thrown around and whatever. It happens every game, but you have no answer to that. No one came out and said, "Hey, that we're not going to take that," or went and grabbed their skill guy or nothing, because they taken a lot of these teams have went with a path that fighting's not a part of it. My guess is next year everyone has some tough guys. Yeah, because several things that happened this year dictate it, because there are none left. The toughest guys are just the toughest good players. Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's
like Ovechkin.
Yeah. Like guys that have to defend for themselves. There's teams that will not. The Rangers will have tough guys next year. Mark my words. But yeah, prime example yesterday, they're like, we're not going to have that. They go out, they send a message back. Point taken. Like, you stuck up for yourself. Everyone now, after day one, I was like, quit crying. Like, go get some toughness. It's on you guys, to the Rangers, The next day, they took some ridicule for being babies and crying or whatever, and they took it in their own hands.
Yeah.
Now everyone has a lot more respect for that, right? So
Yeah.
they're fighting has a place in hockey. And yes, yeah, what they tried to take out is the guy that goes there and it's a big show and a circus off the draw type thing.
For people who are listening, what we're talking about is there was a game between the Caps and the Rangers, and there was a dirty hit from Wilson, who plays for the Rangers, or first, I'm sorry, for the Capitals. And the league didn't do much except for give him a $5,000 slap on the wrist and let him continue to play. So the Rangers were upset about it. And right when the puck dropped, there was a whole brawl. Actually, there was over 100 penalty minutes that game.
There was a bunch of 5-minute, bunch of fights. There's 6 fights in the first period.
Yeah, exactly.
But back to what I'm saying, it wasn't like a dirty hit. What he did is take advantage of skilled guys that were, and Panarin's defense, he jumps in to have his teammates back, but they have no answer to Wilson. So that's what has to happen. So again, back to what I'm saying, mark my words, the New York Rangers will have some kind of toughness.
Yeah, which every team should. And that's been such a big part of hockey since always. So yeah. Don't know what happened. Okay, so now that you've moved on, we want to talk about the next chapter in your life. You own Huxley Hockey Conditioning, hence the sweatshirt, HHC. And how did you know this was something that you wanted to do, which you're very good at, by the way? And you train everyone from youth to pro. And how did you find this passion?
You know what? To be honest, I started doing this. It's always something I've always wanted to be in the game still. And I started doing this my last 2 or 3 years in the coast, actually, in Vegas. I started doing it when I came home in the summer. And we just took it to another level when I was done. And so, you know, I always, like I said, I wanted to still be in the game. I wanted to work with elite players. And I love training. I learned from the best guy in Edmonton called Barry Butt. His name's Barry Butt, but his company's Premier Strength and Conditioning. They are undoubtedly the best hockey training facility in the world, if you ask me. He's awesome. Anyway, always getting better, always ahead. Anyway, and so I really enjoyed, you know, the fitness lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. That's one. 2, in my area, I had to leave my area. I had to move away in the summer, away from my family and friends and everything else. And not to mention financially, it hurt too, to have to move away just to train and skate and stuff. So when I came back, we first started with the gym, and we did a little bit of ice in Lloyd, a place close to here. It's on the Alberta-Saskatchewan border, for anyone who doesn't Saskatchewan border. And we used to go to Lloyd an hour, so we'd train here, then we go to Lloyd. And I started out in this gym down on Main Street, and so I could have groups of 5 or 6. And then the next year expanded, so we reached out to the curling rink here, and they said, yeah, absolutely, nothing's in here, so it worked really well for them. So we turfed the whole thing and, you know, started out a little bit bigger. And every year it kind of got more and more and more. And then, yeah, I mean, last year we had guys that played in the NHL before, but last year was our first full, all the way from, you know, bottom up Huxley Hockey and Conditioning athlete that plays in the NHL. Carson Soucy plays for the Wild. Sure, you know, Seattle's going to take a long look at him in the expansion because he is a very, very good player, I believe. They signed him for 3 years. He signed a big ticket, so good for Cars. But, yeah, we have a bunch of kids that are on the cusp that are playing pro. We have a bunch of kids in junior that are very close to being there, like we're looking 2 or 3 years away. And then we have kids that, it's crazy to say, I have like 12 and 13-year-olds that after you've done this for long enough, and this sounds crazy, you can see it in some kids' eyes whether it's going to happen or not. And maybe not to the extent of the NHL, but maybe they get a scholarship, maybe they play in the dub, whatever. And we got a whackload of those coming up. So we have a whole pipeline, and it just keeps refurbishing. So some of our guys that were here since the very start, like a Connor James, shout out to, he calls himself the OG. Connor James, he went to UAH, University of Alabama, Huntsville, and he retired. Now he's got a teaching degree. You know, he's going back for, he has a kines degree. Sorry, he's going for his teaching degree. He's going to, you know, and so now it's kind of coming full circle, but look at him, for example. Like you said, he has a full out education. It's not all about playing in the NHL.
Yeah.
People don't send their kid here. Hey, I want my kid to play in the NHL. First off, they want them to have an education, right?
Yeah.
So they get their education paid for. I mean, it's a great thing. But we do have kids that literally their parents, like nowadays with iPads and iPhones and everything else, when I was growing up, it's like, oh, let's go play football, let's play baseball, let's do this, let's do that, let's play street hockey, whatever it is you're going to do. But nowadays, kids are specialized in one sport and they go out and they play on their iPad. And so some parents are like, okay, I'm not doing that. I want my kid doing something. I want him to learn about fitness for later on in life, et cetera, et cetera. Or I want my kid to have more confidence in himself or blah, blah, whatever. And so we send their kids here to learn that lifestyle and everything else. And if hockey happens along the way, great. Like I got kids that they have no ambition to play like that, but they love the training and they love all that stuff. And so we kind of take all walks of life.
Yeah. So is there anything that you learned in your career that helped you train these athletes?
Oh, big time. I mean, just not even just myself. Like I learned a lot. I mean, I could write a book. People always tell me, they're like, your life is outrageous. But anyway, but I learned a lot myself, but actually, especially near the middle to end of my career, I paid a lot of attention to other people's situations, how it was handled, etc., at all levels of hockey, for example. And I would say a lot of that experience of other people's I can pass on because not a lot of kids are going down my path or have my story or have my, aggression or whatever, I've learned a lot from other people's situations and through trial and error, just like that's why they have history class, right? Things tend to repeat themselves. And so if you can pass that knowledge on to other kids, it helps them handle the situation they're in because you've seen other guys actually at the higher levels dealing with that.
Yeah. And what have you learned in hockey that really translate to life? I mean, you talk a little bit about training, but you've learned a lot.
Oh, hockey is all about life. Hockey is about learning how to be. Okay, so if you're an employer, do you want the guy that doesn't know how to work in a team, doesn't have ambition, doesn't know how to be on time, can't think in critical situations, can't handle adversity? No, you want that guy. You want the guy that's like, this doesn't faze me. I've been in way worse. I've had way more pressure on me. I've had to grind it out to get to this point. You want the guy that's going to be, and that's what's so successful. That's why athletes after hockey or football or whatever, especially with education, that's why they're so successful because they can handle that. I'm definitely hiring that guy. That being said, you can't, the two worlds are very different. Like, because there are a lot of people like, I don't care who you are. Because when you play, everyone's like, oh, you're the best and whatever, right? Like in a lot of cases. And, all of a sudden it's done and you're like, no, hockey doesn't matter to me. Numbers matter to me or whatever. You have to find a way to take those skills, then realize that you are in a different life.
Yeah.
Style.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there something when you're working with these kids that you can say, yeah, he's going to make it, whether it be successful in life or in hockey career? Is it hard work? Is it natural born talent?
Well, I'll tell you from my sense, like when I played, I was a fighter and forever until my last 5 years, which by then you're aged out almost. It's like, oh, I got to go and fight. That's what they want to see. But I realized later on that they don't, like, that's a big part of my game and whatever. But to be honest, I needed to be a better player to stick in the NHL. I beat up so many guys that are middleweight guys in the NHL or played that role. I was maybe even a better skater or whatever, but I always like, how did that guy get that? And yeah, a lot of it's opportunity, but man, it's the stuff that I didn't think I had to work on that person did a little bit better. And those little tiny details make a massive difference. There's so many great American League players that are quote unquote better players than players in the NHL, right? But they're not as consistent they're lacking one or two small details that are that important for that guy to be up there. So
that's a good point.
So again, back to my thing. That's why I got into this. So when I was done, there's this guy around here had this thing called Power Edge Pro, and so I'm like, oh, I got on the ice and just like in these apparatuses. For anyone who wants to research it, obviously Connor McDavid's the ambassador, but Joe Quinn and Nick Quinn, unbelievably, they've created by far, bar none, the best development tool for any kid. If you want to check out their website, it's awesome. Everything they do. Anyway, I work for them now, so
so shameless plug.
On a side note, like I've been around a lot and of a lot of different development, and there's so many guys that are so great. But as far as something where you can take Joe's brain, or because training with Joe is awesome, but you can actually take what he does, and if you really listen, you can actually go, you can mass produce what he's doing with his gear and his philosophy, right? Where a lot of guys, it's like, okay, great, you're awesome, but I mean, you can only work with so many people, right, in the world, kind of thing. Where Pep is an international machine, so it's an amazing product. Anyway, so I watched and I went out there, and I like, oh, I'm a pro, I can do this stuff. And I went out there and I got humbled really quickly. So I kind of started getting into it. And then I realized, like, holy crap, what was I doing training the way I was training? Like, why was I training like this? Why wasn't I working on this? So that right there is a prime example that separated me from maybe someone else in the American League or the NHL or whatever, is that exact thing. They may have had that skill and then once you even get past the skills, it's the way of thinking the game while you're doing the stuff and all that kind of stuff. Like, you have to have the complete package, so to speak, right? I was obviously lacking that, but I didn't work. So my whole goal when I was done is like, I'm going to do this. So I am probably, it's actually funny, I talk to coaches and GMs that I used to have, and I'll show up somewhere and they'll be like, oh my God, Hux, you're going to teach skills, and they'll laugh about it, guys I used to play with or whatever. And then 99% of the time they come up to me after, like, I'm actually shocked that what you do. And I mean, I've had hours and hours and hours of practice at it, but I will be the first one to tell you, I'm a better player now than I was when I played, by far.
Yeah.
Because I put the hours in. So
and because
now,
you learned what you could have fixed.
Yeah.
I think too many people focus on their strengths. So they're like, I'm really good, I'm just going to keep trying. When, like, things like you're talking about are weaknesses that nobody even pays attention to that could make them a better player.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I didn't do back then. So now I tell these kids, like, repetitions, but not only that, like, even with what I do, if you go through stuff, there's kids that can do things a million miles an hour and whatever. I'm like, that's great. And you're really good at the stuff, but that doesn't translate to a game. So that's why like Joe made me a level 4 pro. So I go to like NHL camps and WHL stuff and handle higher end players. I've had the fortunate ability of being at our camps with Connor, who's an amazing hockey player, and it's just insane to watch the guy go. And anyway, so I've had the fortunate ability of being, in the presence of some pretty darn good players and everything like that through PEP. But again, like I said, I tell our guys all the time, it's one thing to be able to do all this stuff and have this skill. It's another thing to be able to think the game. And I think that's why my program, the way I teach PEP and stuff, everyone's a little different, but and Joe and the top guys, they understand where in a game that's going to translate, what you're doing to get those lanes opened up or whatever, Joe keeps taking it to another level. So it's amazing to be a part of such an awesome organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to wrap things up here, but I do want to say thank you so much for your time. I know that you literally fit me in right after a client, and I hope that you're stateside soon. I do want you to spit off some information where people can contact you if they're interested in meeting up with you. If you're doing any hockey camps, just let people know kind of what you have for them.
If you want to reach out to me, I don't have a website and stuff on purpose. I like to take care of like a smaller group of clients, quality over quantity, I guess you could say. So you can reach out on Instagram at Huxley. It's Hux, HKY condition at Hux HKY, so HUX HKY condition, or on Twitter, same. I think we have the same handle, something like that, or Facebook, whatever. You can send me a message like that. Or if you're looking at hockey camps, you can go to poweredgepro.com. I shout out, we'll be in Vegas shortly. The next little, hopefully as soon as this border thing closes out, we've always wanted to get out there and do it. I've always wanted to give back there. And I can't wait for the kids to start doing pep out there at some point. But they have camps all over the States. Actually, Nick, one of the main guys, is down there right now, constantly doing camps. So you want to get better, you want to take your game to the next level, you got to go to poweredgepro.com, check out for camps and stuff.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Hux. Have a good day, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening today. Sometimes we don't know where life is going to take us. Maybe we want to do something like become a professional hockey player, but instead we become better coaches and teachers to those that are following in our paths. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.